just on the other side of the surgery. So I guess it happened a couple hours ago. Woke up from the amnesia about an hour ago, and here I am now in my private room, thanks to the top-up insurance that we got. And yeah, so pain's not too bad. I'm sure that the pain meds have something to do with that. And well, check back with you in a while. Here's a view of the room. Not bad. Could use a little artwork. Here's the window looking out. Yeah, I think that's the Veracruz Mountains in the background. Can't be sure though. And quite nice. Before I eat it all, let me video it. My first real meal since the surgery yesterday. This last night they just gave me a little bit of dry toast and jam. And then, that's the menu, by the way, for the meal. And then this morning was just one of these rolls here with some jam and butter. So looking forward to finishing this. I've already started, as you can see. One thing I'll be super happy to get rid of are these blood buckets with tubes running from my booty. I guess it's been very useful. So that blood would just be collecting in my leg and butt if it did not have those draining it. But a real pain in the neck. They want me to walk around, except I've got to bend over, pick up these buckets, hook them to the crutches every time I do. Hello. So today it's been 6 full days after receiving a total hip replacement surgery here in Grenoble, France. I guess a little background is in order. We moved to Grenoble, France. My wife, my 2 sons, and our dog approximately 6 years ago. We moved from San Diego, California, where I've lived most of my life. However, my father was both of Polish and, well, he was born in Poland and had Polish citizenship, and he also had UK citizenship. My mother lived for the earlier part of her adulthood and also her teenage years in Switzerland and then in Germany. And my toddler years were spent in Germany. As a result, my boys and I have EU citizenship. And of course, my wife has residency rights as being the spouse of an EU citizen. For most of the time that we've lived here, I worked and paid into the Social Security system, and my wife also works and pays into the French Social Security system. I retired about a year ago. Anyway, as a result, we qualified for the French Universal Healthcare System, or whatever you want to call it. We moved to France for a lot of reasons, but a lot of it had to do with the growth and development of our 2 boys. One of the fringe benefits, but maybe not so fringe, of moving to France has been the French medical system. Even though you pay for it through the Social Security system, it's a lot more affordable than the US. And more importantly, it's a lot more secure. You don't feel like you could slip through the cracks the way you do in the US. Additionally, we feel that overall it is of higher quality than it is in the US. I know that's a subject of debate sometimes, and I think a lot of the medical personnel over here are a bit envious of what the money that the U.S. medical personnel make at times. Anyway, that's a subject I've covered in previous video, which is now a few years old, so I should probably do a renewal of that video, maybe more up to date. Whereas this video is about my recent total hip replacement surgery. So I think it was about 10 years ago now, maybe even longer, that I first noticed my left hip making grinding and popping noises. And on a couple of occasions, I want to say it would kind of spontaneously lock up. I'm not sure if that's the right term, but all of a sudden I'd get a sharp pain and around the groin, hip flexor area, and then it would suddenly have to limp. And then it would go away. But anyway, it was a condition that was progressing. Nevertheless, I was able to continue to engage in a lot of the activities, and most of the activities that I really enjoyed, which included skiing, surfing, although it did affect my surfing to some extent. But I found it an interesting challenge to kind of learn how to restructure my surfing so that I could continue to enjoy the sport. I think, like a lot of people, I prefer natural healing. I have a hesitancy to just jump at a major surgery type of situation, and want to pursue all more natural, less intrusive alternatives before I do that. But this year I had finally developed a permanent limp. The range of motion was getting really bad. It was my back was substituting for the flexion that my hip used to have, and therefore resulting in a bad back. And I've got also long-standing osteoarthritis in my right knee from cartilage or meniscus removal when I was I think I was 19 or 20, and I feared it would make that worse. So I asked my GP here in Grenoble for a referral to a orthopedist for an evaluation. She referred me to a surgeon here in private practice who had a very impressive resume. So I went to see him with my x-rays in hand. I was still not of the mindset that I was ready to do the surgery. I really didn't feel I had sort of given other, alternatives a full try. And I thought maybe I'd have another year in me before I really was ready to do the surgery. Anyway, I went in to see him. He very confident and still and good-natured. Kind of joked with me quite a bit about it. I think he was quite surprised that I wanted to wait a year. Nevertheless, he accommodated me on that. So off I went. And we went to our little beach shack for the summer. And man, I don't know. It seemed to just really trigger it another level of pain and discomfort. So I emailed him and asked if he could fit me in at the end of summer because I didn't want to fly back drive back or whatever to Grenoble and then just didn't want to do it in the summer while we were all out there and at the beach. So he accommodated me, scheduled me for a September surgery. Then after doing some YouTube research, I thought, I really need to give this alternatives a better try than I have. And not only that, the pain kind of reduced a little bit. So I said, I called them back or emailed them back and said, cancel the surgery in September. I'm gonna stay the course and still try to give this, give a year to doing this before I do this. and he was very kind and accommodated me again. Anyway, yeah, didn't get any better, and I kind of gave up the idea of a lot of the sort of alternative. I started out with a real like dedicated self physical therapy program, but all that seemed to do was aggravate it. And so after a couple of months of that, then I had a couple of episodes where it just was kind of had to recuperate and do nothing for a week or two, and it just ratcheted down, and it became pretty. And I couldn't ski that year. I mean, I gave it a couple of groomer runs, but I could not ski that year. That being this year. So I can talk to a lot of people. Everybody who I talked to had wonderful things to say about hip surgery, whether they had it done in the US or whether they had it done here in France. Did some more research, learned about the different types of prostheses and the different materials and their benefits and disadvantages and all of that. And anyway, I went back to my surgeon or my orthopedist, or whatever you can call him, with my tail between my leg. I said, "Doc, I can't wait a year. Can you schedule me back in?" So I think that was maybe March, sometime in March. Got an appointment with him on, well, that was the March appointment. And then, it actually might have been earlier than that, but he scheduled me for surgery on May 12th. Before that, there was a laundry list of things that I had, tests and other specialists that I had to go to, I guess, to see if I was a good candidate for surgery or if there were any special medical problems that they need to be aware of to accommodate during surgery. Blood tests, even a dental exam, more x-rays, a visit to a cardiologist. Those are the things that come to mind. Anyway, another thing I did during the interim was to do a lot of internet research, got into kind of looking at the different types of prostheses, different materials, and talked to different people about their surgeries and what type of surgery they had. There's anterior or posterior surgery. There's, or this kind of refers to the entry point. And let me see what else. So I kind of learned that the ceramic, where you have a ceramic head and a ceramic cup, last the longest and have the least amount of debris that kind of generates in the area over the years, and thus have sort of the most biologically inert. Another thing that I learned was most of the surgeries, from what I could tell by YouTube's, most of the surgeries performed in the US are done with fluoroscopes or CT scans. Correct me, I may have that a little bit wrong, but fluoroscopes, I think, which, as I understand it, are similar to CT scans in that there's kind of difference between a photograph and a video. The way a video consumes a lot more storage space and, is a live action kind of streaming thing. That so is a fluoroscope, and that they use those during surgery. And that kind of horrified me because I am a radioactivity phobic person. I already have a precancerous condition and I don't want to tip those scales. In the meantime, I spoke to a neighbor who is an anesthesiologist at the university hospital here, and he thought that I should go and have a consultation with the orthopedic surgeon. That's both these surgeons, the one I scheduled my surgery with, and and the one that I ultimately consulted with also. Both are knee and hip specialists, and both had this other one had a very impressive resume too. I mean, it just seemed to me that they probably do hundreds of these every year. Anyway, one of the things that he mentioned, and it was sort of backed up by someone else, another French person I spoke to, who said that the private practitioners, they use a private hospital here, private meaning it's not a for-profit hospital, but a non-profit independent hospital, that they kind of rush you out the door a little bit. That was kind of the main thing they said. And that the public hospital is much more kind of robust in keeping you and ensuring that you're on the right track after surgery. Anyway, I did consult with that surgeon in March with the attitude that it would be sort of a second opinion type of format with the second surgeon, the one at the public hospital. And again, I was quite impressed with him and his resume. Also felt like he probably does these, I should have asked specifically, but they both just seem to, all they're doing is ankle, is hip and knee, and one of them's in a public hospital, and the other is was formerly associated with the public hospital, and I don't know, president of this hip and knee section of doctors of the hospital, something like that. So yeah, they're impressed with both of them. So his earliest available surgery on his schedule was in June. I can't remember what date in June, and that was in March when I had the appointment with him. I asked him if there's a possibility of somebody dropping, canceling surgery and me being on a wait list and getting an earlier surgery, and he said yes, there is. I did inform them that June would not be good because, again, we're going back to the coast, spend the summer there. So he scheduled me for a September surgery. So anyway, I want to talk a little bit about the differences between the two doctors. Some of it's conjecture, but anyway, let me go at it. So first, with respect to the type of prosthesis, the first doctor, the doctor that ultimately did the surgery, discouraged me from getting the ceramic on ceramic. His opinion was that, first of all, that they have a higher dislocation rate. And he said if I was surfing and it dislocated, or skiing on my own somewhere in the wilderness, that, as he put it, I'd be dead. So he was adamant about that, and seemed like a good idea to follow his advice. And his recommendation was a combination of a ceramic head on a acetabular, I guess it's a what do you call it? Highly cross-linked polyethylene. Is that the head? I guess that's the head. So there's a head within there's an insert that goes into that head, or I guess that's the cup. I'm sorry, but it's ceramic on polyethylene. And the other thing that he recommended was a dual mobility prosthesis, which I had not encountered before in my research. And apparently it's something that was invented by the French. It's been in existence since 1972. However, they have constantly improved it. It didn't really take hold in the U.S. at all. And I guess the U.S. felt it had some shortcomings in the early years. And now it's being, I think, from what I understand, more widely accepted in the US, but mainly in cases of revision surgery. In other words, where the surgery doesn't go well the first time and they have to go in and fix something, or where it's just been a number of years and something went defective and they have to fix it. So anyway, the advantages of it and what it was made for was, I think, both people who were problematic, very elderly, and candidates for dislocation, vulnerable to dislocation, but also for people who were very active and wanted a full range of motion. So one of the advantages, the big advantage is really that it has a greater range of motion than a standard hip prosthesis. The second surgeon, the one at the university hospital, he straight out said that they don't do ceramic on ceramic. And he also recommended a dual mobility prosthesis. In fact, he was the first to recommend that. And then, surprisingly and without prompting, the other surgeon, the one that ultimately performed the surgeon, he recommended that as well. So after doing a little bit of research, I went with their recommendation regarding the dual mobility hip prosthesis. So one of the significant differences between the two surgeons was the one in private practice was going to cost me an additional 800 euros over and above our public health insurance and mutual. So that was just coming straight out of pocket. And, by U.S. standards for this type of surgery, that's pretty minimal. And but since I got a head start with the private practice surgeon and had a May 12th date, rather than waiting until September, or the chance of a cancellation, I just felt it was worth it to go with the May 12th, the certainty, since that worked out well with her, gave me enough time to recover in time for our summer outing to the beach. But it is my understanding that if I'd gone with the other doctor, that there would have been no premium or additional charge over what our insurance charges. This is how bad I am. I don't even know if we have a copay. I've never noticed it. If we do, it's like, I think that it does. Medical is just covered up to a percentage. But the costs in France are so de minimis compared to the US. Then it's just, it's just crazy. And it's sometimes you don't even notice it. I mean, all the time maybe. But cost isn't the only potential advantage of the public hospital. I know that may come as a big surprise to a lot of Americans that the public hospital would be both cheaper and maybe better. But the materials I was given after the visit with the public hospital doctor were just so much more robust, and I'll get to it a little bit later. But I did, I think the surgery was excellent, but I was able to stay in the hospital for a couple of days. The treatment was pretty good. The food was decent, but I did feel like it was a little skeletal. The post-operative program when they sent me home was a little bit thin. For example, and this is really pre-operative, but the public hospital, the doctor there required me to do 2 months of physiotherapy 2 times a week. I think it might have said 2 to 3 times. No, 2 times a week. Before the operation, to strengthen the muscles around the hip transplant, around the surgery, which is important to preventing dislocation, is my understanding. Whereas the private doctor not only did he not prescribe any physio before the surgery, even though he mentioned how important it was that the muscles in that area be strong enough uh, to prevent a dislocation. Which, by the way, my conjecture is that the dual mobility prosthesis so reduces the chances of dislocation that when I agreed to go with the dual mobility, he probably didn't think it was as important. Anyway, so but not only did he not prescribe preoperative physiotherapy, he didn't prescribe postoperative physiotherapy until I asked for it. And now, in fairness, that was an oversight of his. He literally does not believe that it's very important. He's told me when I asked him about it that he actually doesn't like the program that a lot of physical therapists put their his patients on, particularly a couple of exercises that actually aggravate the recovery or make it more painful. And and he said it's the only thing you need to do a lot of walking and do some stairs. So that's his attitude. But he did go ahead and accommodate me with a prescription for physio. It seems like everyone else I've talked to, I mean literally everyone I've talked to or seen videos, puts huge emphasis in doing physical therapy. So we'll see. But yeah, the materials I walked out of in the appointment for the university hospital, the materials were just a lot more robust. The program seemed a lot more robust, and if the word of mouth is correct, they probably would have held me for a couple more days in the hospital and just done a lot more nanny care, make sure that that I did things right, which is not to be undervalued, because I made a couple of mistakes already here trying to interpret some pretty thin material that I was given. So yeah, anyway. Let me see. I wanted to do this in a structured way, but temptation is to sort of jump around. Anyway, as I mentioned, I selected the private doctor because A, he seemed highly competent. B, I got a perfect date. C, let me see, what else? C, a highly competent, perfect date. Maybe that's all there is. And did I mention that the public doctor also poo-pooed the idea of like fluoroscopy? I mean, they both thought it was kind of absurd that the American doctors, or at least the ones in the YouTubes, even use fluoroscopy. And I kind of get the idea that that's hell, because they do so many of these and they don't need to have a sort of live action streaming video of the bones as they're doing the surgery. But also part of my conjecture, and this is something I found out later, is both of them use a posterior approach, entry to to access the area where they replace the hip. And I guess in the U.S. it's increasingly popular to do an anterior approach, which is from the front, which, boy, do I want to get into the technicality of this? Anyway, to just sum it up a little bit, anterior, I guess, is a little bit less invasive. They don't have to do any muscle cutting. Posterior is a bit more invasive, but I've read that the recovery times now are pretty much identical for both. Posterior, I suppose, gives them a little better view of what they're doing. Anterior is available in France. I researched it, and it is available, and doctors are doing it here. It's just these two doctors preferred in the posterior, and if that's what they've been doing for 20 years, and they do hundreds of it, I just assume have them stick with what they can do, basically in their sleep. Anyway, as I approached the surgery, now that I had really committed to doing it, I was really nervous that everything goes right. So every time I took a test, whether it's the blood test, the x-rays, the cardiologist, I just, was really nervous that something would show up, that they would postpone the surgery. or whatever. The one that surprised me a little bit is when my it's a pre-operative meeting with the anesthesiologist a week or two before the surgery. She uh, uh, ordered that I get a dental exam before the operation. I guess there's a risk. That's in fact I read that's like one of the biggest areas of risk is bacteria from the mouth to mouth. So I got that. Got got flying colors on that. No infections. No unwanted bacteria in my mouth. So yeah. So got all those done. So that was good. So while on a practical level, it would have benefited me if I had done the surgery a year or even 2 years earlier. I just was not mentally ready for it, and I had to have my mind in a state where I would have no regrets. And it got there through physical pain and limitation. So I never really had the kind of pain some people have where they talk about not being able to sleep or just sort of ambient pain. Mine was always really the pain of each time I took a step on it, or whether if I had been doing some activity for a period of time and the pain just increased. Also, I think a lot of it was sort of the collateral pain being caused by just a joint with with a very limited and increasingly limited range of motion. In fact, the doctor said jokingly that I should wait a year and I wouldn't have any pain at all because the hip was about ready to completely fuse. Anyway, just I had a couple of pre-operative appointments with the anesthesiologist first, and then the surgeon a week or two before the surgery. And then once I was checked into the hospital, I got to meet them again. And so I went the way it worked is they told me the date of the surgery, and they told me that they would call me the day before to tell me exactly when I should show up at the hospital. And so I got that call, which told me to show up early afternoon. I think it was 1 p.m. 13 for Frenchies. Anyway, did so. Let me see what happened then. So, I think of my nervousness at that time was blocking out my memory. But yeah, that's right. I ended up in a waiting room, sort of lounging back in a chair with a bunch of other people with the television on. Got kind of sleepy, even though I don't think I'd had any anesthesia yet. And very comfortable chair. I can't remember if they had got me out of my clothes by that time. I think so, possibly. I might have been in the surgical gown by that time. But yeah, weird that I can't remember. Came with a overnight bag and everything in there: clothing, toiletries, pajamas, bathrobe. They even a couple of things I forgot to bring, or which one was they told me to bring a towel and towelettes, which I'd forgot. Didn't turn out to, I'm sure they have people forgetting stuff all the time because they supplied me with disposable ones after the surgery to take my first sort of sink bath. Anyway, at some point I was put on a gurney and wheeled kind of like down the corridor into another waiting room. I think that's when I saw the anesthesiologist, and ultimately they wheeled me into the surgery room, the operation theater, whatever you want to call it. And I still had not been given any anesthesia, anything. And at that point, I was pretty freaked out because I did not want to see. I want to just go to sleep and then wake up and never have seen the surgery room. By the way, I did have the option between general anesthesia and the kind where you're, I guess, mostly awake, but all your nerves are blocked off so you don't feel it. And I had considered that because I thought, what if they want to ask me a question? And maybe I want to make sure they don't get confused which hip it was, because um, the odd thing is, several of the nurses along the way in the little stations asked me what hip it was. It kind of freaked me out a little bit. Um, and I don't remember anybody sort of drawing on my hip and with a target and saying this one. So, but it was all in all the paperwork. So I'm sure by the time they get in the surgery room, they do look at that, and they did ultimately get the right hip. That's a good thing. But yeah, they didn't apply the anesthesia until I was already in the operating room with those crazy round lights with all the things, and I was getting a little bit panicky at that point, at least internally. And then, thank God, the anesthesia was applied with, I think, through an IV kind of a drip. They also put something. I'd always thought the anesthesia came over your mouth, but they told me that, which they did put the mask over my mouth, but told me that was just oxygen. And anyway, that was lights out. And can't remember, did I wake up in? I had a private room, which was covered by our top-up insurance. It was private top-up insurance that we paid for. And I'm sorry, my wife. I really don't have the figures on a lot of these things, and I will bring if there's a big demand for it, I'll research it and come up with a video later on what it's all cost. Yeah, I think I woke up before I was actually admitted to my private room, because I sort of vaguely remember transferring from the gurney to the bed. But I had really expected that I would be in intense pain for at least a week, and that I felt, although I had become pretty good at tolerating pain through just living with this for quite a long time, the idea of having sort of ambient throbbing pain. I'd broken my ribs a year earlier on a surfing an artificial wave kind of accident. And that was quite painful. A lot of ambient pain on that. So yeah, I woke up and I had very little pain. And I figured, okay, that's just the residual of the anesthesia, and whatever they, did. Well, anesthesia, the local probably more than the general. So yeah, but it really never had much ambient pain. I had a sort of overall malaise feeling at one time in the hospital, and I think that's just there was a gap between the painkillers. So the painkillers I was given was the main one seemed to be a mixture of Tylenol and some kind of opiate, and then lots of Tylenol, but and some kind of other anti-inflammatory. So yeah, I spent 2 great days in the hospital. My energy level was good. My pain level was barely non-existent. I think even that first day they might have got me up on my feet to get to the restroom, perhaps. I don't know, certainly on the second day. And they kept me for a couple days in the hospital. It was coming up on a holiday, so, well, I'll get to that later. So yeah, I asked to, my wife was working, so I asked to, they told me they could release me the day after the operation if I wanted. I said I didn't want to because my wife was working, and I felt like I still didn't know how I was getting home from the hospital. Yeah, I asked to stay an extra day in the hospital, and which was a good thing. I wasn't really ready to go home. The meals were good, surprisingly. I have kind of a low threshold for good meals. The breakfast was pretty skimpy, as you would expect in most European countries. It was like a roll of bread that was very kind of hard. Well, I love hard, crusty breads. And butter and some confiture, some jam, in other words. And
And I don't know, it was really weird. They asked me if you want coffee, and I said, yeah. They big or small, give me big. So give me a bowl of coffee. And it was really good coffee. And then lunch was big full meal. A little bit kind of, what would you call it? Ready to eat meal, kind of a processed, some kind of processed, uh, let me see. That first one was a kind of a fish and chips type meal with a breaded fish, and the fish looked like it had been sort of like fish particle board. It wasn't like the original full fiber fillet. Something that had kind of run through, you know, been processed and stuck together. Um, and but it was tasty, and some nice vegetables and rice, and it was tasty. The second one was billed as being some kind of veal, but again, I'm very very processed veal, but again tasty. And I had lots of stuff: banana, dessert, um, all sorts of good stuff. That was two. I know I had four full meals there, but or five full meals there, but I only remember two for some reason. Um, but yeah, food was decent. I was enjoying it. I was getting a lot of reading done. And anyway, finally, the day to return home, I said, yeah, I committed to returning home on Thursday, the 14th, which happened to be a national holiday in France. I think it's called Ascension Day. And they gave me a list of things, of prescriptions and so forth that I was supposed to have. And I said, it's a holiday. How am I going to get these? And that was a problem because all the pharmacies were closed. They had said, well, I can get it at what's called a pharmacy en garde or something like that, or du garde, or de garde. And but those pharmacies were connected to hospitals that only served the doctors that worked at the hospital. And the hospital I was at did not have one of those pharmacies, I don't think. Anyway, I couldn't find it. Anyway, they did agree to give me enough of the drugs to get me through the holidays, and it was a little bit more than that. So that worked out great. So had one more visit from the surgeon. We went over some things, um, and then he forgot his cell phone in the in the room. I had to come back half an hour later, and I thought, oh, we didn't forget any surgical instruments in me. But no, he was great. He was really competent, and yeah. One of the nice little surprises was I was kind of trying to figure out how I was supposed to get home, and they asked if I wanted an ambulance to ride home, and I said yeah. So they scheduled me for that, and that was, they showed up at their appointed time. Okay, they were a little bit late, but who cares? And they took me home in an ambulance, so that was very cool. Very easy to get back in, and yeah. So now that was on Friday, and now today is Monday, and so I've made it through this far. Oh, the other kind of weird thing is I was supposed to get I part of the assignment was to get a nurse infirmière à domicile, which is basically a home nurse to come every other day, uh, redress the wound, um, help with like this compression bandage I have in, and just check on my status. And then in 2 weeks, if everything goes well, she pulls out the stitches. I think she's authorized to do a bunch of other stuff too, as needed. So I think one thing that I would have thought it would be an improvement. I suspect that the public hospital was better at, considering just the kind of the robustness of their materials and things that people have told me. Is I just the post operative care was I should have been I should have been given these things, these assignments, the information about the post-operative care before the surgery. It should have been given to my wife, whatever, so we could have lined these things up um, before the operation actually happened, so they were all in place when I got home. It was a little fly by the seat of your pants for me to be confronted with, like, okay, you got to get these prescriptions, you got to line up a nurse to come visit you, and all this has got to be done on a holiday or shortly thereafter. Yeah, that was not. I don't think that was cool. That was not the way it should have been handled. These things would have been easy to line up ahead of time. So that was definitely something could have been improved. But and also because of the kind of the skeletal nature of the materials and everything, it's been a little. I did double dose on a blood thinner yesterday, which I wasn't happy about because I so far had no bruising in the wound, and now I do. I don't know if that's attributable to having too much of blood thinner, or that was just going to happen anyway. But so there you have it. There's a little sketch. The way the the post-operative program. That being said, I have been pleasantly surprised so far. Knock on wood. I'm gonna knock on that wood right now, literally. Um, the pain has been much less than expected, almost zero. Just sitting here. I'm sure the medications are important in that. I try to keep on the program with that. I feel a bit of discomfort when I wake up in the morning on the hip. Yeah, okay, another one of these things with the sketchy post-operative. So, I watch these YouTubers and they come home with all sorts of goodies. And one of the things that's been emphasized is the ice packs. Everybody's got these sort of ice machines and whatever. the post-operative materials literally suggested buying some bags of peas and freezing those and using that as ice packs. No prescription for any kind of gel pack or anything like that. And maybe they do work just as good as, or if not better than like the commercial stuff. As mentioned, it was a holiday. The grocery stores were closed. We did not have peas in our freezer. We did have mixed stir-fry vegetables. So instead, we took some mixed stir-fry vegetables and a bag of that. And it was already in its own plastic bag. And then we put it in a big Ziploc bag to give it an extra measure of leak-proofness. And I've been using that 3 days straight. Kind of forgot about going out and shopping for peas. And that seemed to be working out well. Last night, it exploded. And woke up with what looked like minestrone on the sheets. So, yeah, that wasn't so good. And it's kind of sad because we had a brand new mattress and now got a mattress stain. So, that's kind of sketch. One of the things that's also kind of different from the U.S. In the U.S., all the YouTubes show people coming home with walkers and crutches, and then ultimately they go to a cane. France does not use crutches. I don't think I've seen American-style crutches once here, but I see these things that I'm about to show you all the time. So these, you hold the handle there, and then the cuff kind of goes behind your elbow, or just below your elbow, and they work quite well. Probably better than crutches, and I think they work both like kind of a walker does. I mean, they give you a lot of stability and ability sort of to walk at the same time you're using them. And then you can kind of turn around and use it as a cane as well. So they've been quite good. Don't know why we don't use them in the U.S. Um, I asked some medical person, I can't remember when, why these are so popular here versus the American style crutches. Oh, yeah, I guess it was my surgeon. He said those American style crutches they kind of consider dangerous because you're more likely to do a face plant from height with those. That makes sense to me. These give you, I think, a little more flexibility to make adjustments quickly. So yeah. As for my recovery experience, as mentioned, surprisingly pain-free so far. Um, Energy level was good at the hospital and the first day back here, but then all of a sudden, the second and third day, uh, meaning the day before yesterday and yesterday, I got very, very sleepy in the afternoon. I think that's part of the body just trying to focus its energy on healing. Um, and yeah, I only lasted for about 4 hours each day, and then just basically had to lay down the rest of the day. Um, Kind of back up today, energy wise. I haven't had any fever. Um, Maybe just a touch of nausea a little bit at times. Oh, and then of course one of the things that's a classic after surgery, and especially if you're taking any kind of opiate medication, constipation. Yeah, basically didn't do it for a couple of days, but then it kicked in. I did take a little sort of a natural fiber pill that my wife got at the health food store just for general purposes a while ago, and I don't think that really did it because it happened. Relief came too quickly afterwards, so I think it was just a coincidence. I don't think that it was supposed to be. It's not a fast acting uh, supplement that I took. So too much time on that topic. Yeah. So, and yeah, the main thing is I've been surprised at how I am able to stand and walk around the apartment. I have left several times the apartment to kind of take a walk outside. Then I kind of notice, yeah, I'm not normal yet. Quite slow compared to people walking around me. Feel quite vulnerable. Um, a non-flat surface makes it a lot of difference, but um, still amazed that such dramatic carpent biological carpentry, sawing your bone off, basically a form of amputation, could have at least thus far have such a little be is not more painful and not more just traumatic. So yeah, let me see. How can I wrap this up? I did bring up that home care nurse thing, and it turned out not to be as tough to get one as I feared, even with the holiday. So yeah, she's coming every other day. Been wonderful. Our dog likes her. I think she's more of a cat person though. And what else? Oh, one thing I got to give a shout out to is French pharmacies. Maybe one of the best things about the French medical uh, services chain of supply. Um, in contrast to the U.S., where pharmacies now are mostly contained in big box CVS, Walgreens, Costco kind of places. If I understand correctly, by law, pharmacies in France have to be owned by a pharmacist. I haven't even noticed any chains. They're all little neighborhood pharmacies. Even in fact, my older son Ernest is working at one now, and they have a high degree of expertise. They're they're called doctors of pharmacy. They're the education, and I think I read it's like 6 to 9 years to be a doctor of pharmacy. They um, are they actually provide some level of medical services. They're resources, neighborhood resource. Picking mushrooms for consumption in France is a huge thing. It's a national pastime, and of course, there's the danger of picking and eating a poisonous mushroom. Although most French people seem to be pretty expert at knowing which are edible and which are not. But if you have any doubt, you can. Apparently, I've been told you can take it to the pharmacist, and they'll tell you whether you got good mushrooms or not. Um, yeah, just wonderful places. They get everybody. I think has their own favorite pharmacist, and they become friends, and they just become the most popular people in the neighborhood, quite frankly, next to the boulangerie, maybe even more so. So, just huge shout out to French pharmacies. Love them. Wish we had that in the U.S.
Okay, I just did a little bit of research, and the average number of nights in the hospital after total hip replacement surgery in the US is 1 night. In the UK, it's 8 nights. And in France, it's 5 nights. So I spent 2 nights in the hospital, not because I was demanding to go home. In fact, just the opposite. I really wanted an extra day, and they had actually encouraged me, or said they would approve of me leaving after 1 night. So this French private hospital, non-profit private hospital, is I would say a little bit more like the U.S. than the U.K. for sure, or even France. As I mentioned, France, it's 5 nights. Now, what I feel about that, I feel that there was too much trial and error, little mini accidents that I had here that resulted in shocks of pain, in learning not to do that again, and not enough guidance on what to do when I got home. So yeah, I would have preferred to spend some more nights in the hospital, having the physio come in each day. I've not seen a physio since I left the hospital, and guess I will begin to do the research on finding one now. As I mentioned, my surgeon was ambivalent about physiotherapists. So anyway, I've maybe pushed it a little a little harder than I should have, because I sort of listened to a lot of propaganda about how you could start walking the very first day, and should do some walking every day right from the beginning, which I've done, and I've taken some rather long walks, and I've had some some close calls and some shocks of pain. Knock on wood. Hope it didn't do anything lasting. And yeah, so definitely, all things being equal, I would have chosen the public hospital here. Overall, though, I must say the absence of pain, especially sort of constant ambient pain versus shock of pain on making a wrong movement, has been really surprising. I did not expect so little pain. Matched only by the absence of my muscles, I would say, operating correctly at this point, because it's like I walk around with the crutches and my mind says, well, you're not feeling any pain in that leg. You should be able to walk normally on that leg, which I cannot even it just doesn't seem to want to walk normally yet. It does do a pretty good job, or I do a pretty good job with the crutch, using it as a cane on the opposite side of the injured leg, taking I don't know, probably about 50% of the weight off of that leg, and then I can do a decent stride. But yeah, if I try to do without the crutch altogether and walk full weight on that leg, it just, Like this just doesn't want to seem to move, and also if I turn it a little bit wrong, I get a shock, a shock of pain.